International Scholars. This is Angela Walton-Raji at firstdegreebound.com. I hope that you're busy. I know for many of you, you're in school, so many things are going on, and you're beginning to think about coming to America a year from now. I'm talking to you right now because it's not even September. Most schools in the U.S. have a beginning year season that begins mid to late August and early September, and it goes through the end of May or early June. So some of you may be in your final year in terms of secondary school, and many of you are thinking, well, I'll start to worry about that in a few months. No, you need to be thinking about it right now. It takes at least a good 12 to 15 months for a student to successfully matriculate at a school in the States. And there are some things to consider. There are over 2,500 colleges and universities, accredited institutions, and of all those institutions, you have choices. You have large universities to small colleges. What we refer to as college, many of you may think in the British sense of a college being a secondary school. Now, college is higher education in the States, and when you finish your studies at a college successfully, you do receive a bachelor's degree, equal to a bachelor's degree that is awarded at any institution known as a university as well. There are large schools, small schools. There are schools in rural areas, some in small college towns, and some in urban areas as well. You need to also think about your own personal goals and interests. Many times, students have an interest in a discipline, but applying from home, they're applying with the values of home, meaning one listens to one's parents, as certainly you should in most things in life, but in terms of looking at a school in the U.S., this is where your own personal interests are going to be important. Now, I know many of you are going to have people in the family who are going to say, well, so what that you're interested in history and geography? You're not going to get a job in that. You need to study mathematics, or you need to study engineering, or you need to study business or study accounting, because that's where you're going to get a job. We're in the middle of a global recession right now. No job is guaranteed for anyone. So as you're thinking about, and of course you are now, what, 4 to 5 years away from that first degree, there will be another cycle. The economy will have changed, and there are going to be a lot of changes by that time. And of course, don't forget, technology brings about a lot of changes and job openings in many areas that don't exist right now. But that should not be your focus. Your focus right now should be your personal growth and enrichment. And going on and choosing that right college or university is very important. Now, if you're looking at universities, there are private universities, there are public or state-funded universities. Many of these sometimes are referred to as the old land grant institutions, when in the early days in the formation of the United States, when it was decided that the population needed other options to educate its population, certain allocations of land, hundreds and thousands of acres, were set aside by each state as they began to emerge for the education of its population. These state-supported institutions have in their structure, in terms of cost and expense, they have fees, and there are advantages if you come from a particular state. If you attend a school, if you have lived all your life and you're a resident of the state of Missouri, you will have certain benefits that a student from Ohio who goes to that school won't have, because you will have what is known as in-state tuition. That's based on your residency. There are ways in which you can acquire residency after 1 year. But if you're applying as an international student, then you're always going to be considered a visitor to the country, because you're going to be on an international student visa. But keep in mind, as you're looking at issues of budget, that as a student from outside of the country, that you will have to pay out-of-state fees. Now, in case you are a U.S. citizen, and I know there are a lot of students who come to the U.S. who were born here, but then taken back home, raised in their parents' home country, and so experientially you're an international student, but politically you have a U.S. passport, you're a U.S. citizen. But again, you're going to Ohio and you've lived as an expatriate, as an expat abroad, you're not a resident of that state either. Now, after a year, in many cases, an individual can have their residency changed. But if you arrived only in that state, only to go to school, then you're still considered out of state. So it is important that you understand that it is a very, very it's a very serious issue. Certainly you don't want to be in any way accused by an institution for fraud or trying to work the system. Trust me, institutions are fully aware of the fact that individuals want to get that extra benefit. That shouldn't even be your motivation. Your motivation as an applicant, as a student who's serious about himself, herself, then your goal should be about finding the best program for you. And the temptation, I know, is there. You have friends who are close to the family, and Uncle so-and-so is going to be your guardian or going to help you get into a particular school. Well, is that particular school near Uncle so-and-so's home the right school for you? Is that the right fit for you? These are all issues to think about. Keeping in mind also, there is the social issue, and social by that, or the sociological issue, I should say. I don't mean social in terms of parties and good times. I mean in terms of where you fit, in terms of your own personality, motivation, maturity. All this is very, very important. If you're going to a school that's largely known as a party school, trust me, and you are a quiet person, that might not be the best fit. I recommend also that you apply to more than one school. Just don't rely on Uncle so-and-so in America or Uncle so-and-so in Toronto to help you get into that one school. You do need to submit multiple applications. It is wise, certainly, to do that. It's often recommended, and I recommend this to students, American students who are applying right from this country. I recommend that you also have at least one safety school. And by that, a safety school is a school to which you're going to get admitted. Most people can get admitted somewhere. Now, is it the best fit? Maybe, maybe not. But it's a backup. It's sort of insurance, so to speak. It's a school in which, and in some cases, it may be a school in which your father or mother attended, or maybe you had a sibling who attended there, and you may be considered a legacy candidate, meaning that there has been a member of the family who's attended that institution, so they may extend admission to you. But you want to apply to a school in which you know you qualify, if you know you have strong grades, strong test scores. Yes, you must also address the issue of the standardized tests. Well, it is important that you have that one backup school, the school that you know, if nothing else fails, you can always enroll there. And if it's not a good fit, you can think about transferring after you've matriculated and had some time under your belt and had a chance to adjust to the system. But then start to have the other schools. Of the at least 4, I always recommend 5, but at least 4 for international students that you apply to. One might be sort of your long reach school. You're not quite sure what your chances are if you've known other students who have similar credentials to the credentials you have, and have they been admitted, where do they apply? You want to have choices. Also, this is an option for you. Do you know that you can have an interview, a college interview? There are alumni who live all over the world, and you'd be surprised at the school that you may be interested in, especially at large state universities, right there in your city. I don't care if it's Accra, Kumasi, Sokoto, Abuja, Lagos, wherever. You'd be surprised. There are quite a few alumni who live there, and many universities ask their alumni to interview students, which can sometimes help you as well, which I'll go into that a lot more in detail later. But it is important that you do think about some of these things and start to really strategize, even if you're 2 years out. 2 years is even more ideal because you have an opportunity to prepare for the standardized tests. A word about the tests. Many students are aware if they're applying to graduate school, yes, I have to take the GRE, or yes, I have to take the SAT if I'm applying for that first undergraduate degree.
But what is this about taking the TOEFL? I'm from an English-speaking country. Why should I have to take the TOEFL? The TOEFL, T-O-E-F-L, the test of English as a foreign language. You're in a country where the national language is English. But guess what? This can really be to your advantage. Many students are not used to taking the SATs or the ACTs as required in many other schools. And for those of you applying to graduate school, the GRE, an exam in which there's a certain pace in which you're going to respond, as opposed to just writing everything that you know, which you might be used to that system in your own country. You've got to fill in little dots. There's no writing at all that's involved in some cases. So you may find that, well, I've never taken this type of exam before. So many students find it kind of a shock. Well, if you're 2 years out, you have time in your hands. You have the opportunity to practice for the exam. Now, I would recommend very strongly that once you've registered to take the exam, and you can usually take it at the embassy or a certain designated place that the USIS office has designated as official testing sites in your country. But it is important that you expose yourself to it early. But once you've registered to take the test, you can obtain free software from the College Board, from ETS, and get the free software that gives you a chance to practice testing. You know, the more you take something and the more you practice, the better you perform. And that's something that you certainly can do. And I strongly, strongly recommend it. But you say again, but I speak English. Why should I have to take this exam? This is an insult. Well, I'll tell you another reason why. Many students don't always perform very well on the standardized tests, the GRE or the SAT, but they're fluent in English. The TOEFL tests your fluency, and many schools will overlook a weaker SAT verbal, a weaker GRE verbal, if they see a high score on the test of English as a foreign language. I'm not going to say they're going to disregard it. I'm not going to say they're going to substitute it. But having that high performance on a test you're bound to pass, well, there's no pass or fail, but you're bound to perform well on it, is going to only be in your favor. That gives you something else as a credential to submit when you submit your application. I'll spend another essay talking, video talking about the essay, because it is very important that I address how you express yourself and sell yourself to the institution. And I have noted that many international students don't always know how to do this very, very well. Especially I've noticed this from applicants from Ghana, from Kenya, not as much from South Africa. I think they've been kind of Americanized, perhaps. Nigeria as well. I see these short 3, 4, 5 sentence essays, and that's what they submit for admission to a master's program, a doctoral program, or an undergraduate program, a bachelor's degree program. Not sufficient, not appropriate. I'll talk about that at a later date. Anyway, that is enough for now. It's time to get busy. Think this time next year that you will have done the right things in terms of making some of those choices. If you have questions on how to go about that or how to find a match, shoot me an email at firstdegreebound@gmail.com. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Take care of yourself. Be wise, as I always tell students, be wise and be smart, because you are bound for that first American degree. Take care. I hope you're well, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.